Now, following last night's Democratic debate in California, which is one of the largest primary states, Republican pollster Frank Luntz held a focus group of voters and asked basically who they prefer, who they thought won the debate. So now I want to show you a video of him asking one young woman what her response was. Let's take a look.
Well, I thought I liked Amy and Biden.
And who do you like?
Definitely Bernie Sanders.
He won you over also. Tell me why.
He's on fire. He wants this so bad.
Did you say fire?
Yeah, he's on fire.
Explain that. I mean,
He's just feverishly hungry to change the America.
Notice how she almost said the world. And I would agree that he is going to try to change the world. But look, he's on fire. I love it. I love it. Because again, here we had somebody who was like, oh, I don't know, Biden, maybe Amy Klobuchar. By the way, Bill Maher and Nate Silver are probably like, what Klobuchar? No, Klobuchar. Any moment, she's going to overtake the field. Any moment. No, it looks like we're seeing the opposite. Maybe Klobuchar goes from 2 to 3%. But as you can see, a lot of younger people who originally would go for somebody like a Biden or a Klobuchar hear Bernie Sanders and they're like, no, man, that's fire. That's fire. We love this. And so they're blown away by Bernie Sanders' passion for the issues. And I'm not surprised because he actually does have a legitimate passion for the issues. So now, following this, Luntz, he's going to go and try to dive into this, and he's going to create some terrible framing around it. So let's go to that video.
so you responded very favorably to him. My question now is, which is a higher priority? How they communicate or what they stand for? If you had to choose, because when I asked you about Bernie, it was all about his passion. It was about his communication. Which is a higher priority to you as you approach the California primary?
So again, before I get to their answer, once again, going to point out the framing. Oh, it's all about a style of communication. As if that's really actually a style that Bernie Sanders practices beforehand. No. The reason that Bernie Sanders communicates the way that he does and does so passionately is because he actually cares about the issues that he's talking about. This comes from Bernie's heart. And that's why people like him. That's why people trust him, because this is not some, focus group, ironic, since we're talking about a focus group, poll tested, candidate that's put together by an amalgamation of, good hair, nice suit, and talking points, right? This is a real person. This is a real human being. And so he actually cares. And now Frank Luntz, and I think a lot of the establishment is blown away by that. They don't understand because Luntz himself, he's a massive right winger. And so he's the ideas guy. He's the guy that Republicans go to in order to try to frame an issue, right? That's what he's good at. And so he'll frame things around, freedom and liberty and all that stuff, while coming up and trying to basically cover for terrible policy that ends up just helping billionaires and corporations. And so Frank Luntz, he's like confused. He's like, wait, I don't understand. What's the political angle here from this rhetoric? I don't understand. But there is no angle. He stands for what what he speaks about, he stands for. And again, people don't quite understand that. And so now he tries to separate this when this is ultimately interconnected. And you're going to see from the next response or the next couple of responses that the people that he's talking to do understand that, do know that they're interconnected. Watch.
Who would say how they communicate? Raise your hands. And who would say where they stand? And yet you told me that it was Bernie's communication. So explain that.
Well, the communication helps you win the presidency. When you are president, then it's what you stand for. But what Bernie can do is he can combat Trump. No matter what Trump says, Bernie has an answer for it, and he's going to say it right away. And I have no doubt of his, he's the best speaker on the stage, so.
With Bernie, it's one and the same. He communicates what he stands for. Because it's not enough to just say you don't like Trump. I mean, of course you don't like Trump, but you got to know what you're for. And I always know what Bernie's for.
Yeah. I'm someone who cares much more about the issues and how they communicate, but I think I'm in the minority. I think everyone in this room is in the minority because we're the kind of people who would show up to this kind of event. Most of America does not care. We want to know who has the most charisma, who can yell loudest, and I think Bernie absolutely won the debate on those grounds alone.
All right, so you had a little bit of a mix there, but mostly it was people saying, look, Bernie Sanders is the one that we trust because he communicates. And then since he's passionate about what he is talking about, we also trust him to actually do the policy and to take on Donald Trump. And so those are really interesting answers. And it turns out, of course, that focus group's made up, I think, of 24 people. 6 people came in being pro-Sanders. Turns out 10 people left being pro-Sanders, thinking Sanders is a better candidate. 9 people, of course, for Elizabeth Warren. 1 for Biden, and I think 1 for Klobuchar. So, hey, we had some Klobentum yesterday. But here's the thing. Again, we know what Bernie Sanders stands for now. But what does Amy Klobuchar, speaking of her, stand for? I still don't really know. Joe Biden. Well, look, Joe Biden, we know he stands for the status quo. Nothing will fundamentally change. That's what he told his donors. So don't worry, nothing is going to change. Okay. Pete Buttigieg. Now, Pete Buttigieg, I think we can tell, based on what we know now from all of this. And look, before the primary or when things were just starting to get, started, we're getting to know the candidates at first. Pete Buttigieg was an interesting case, right? Because we didn't know much about him. He's mayor of a small town. Then you dig into him. Then he starts changing his positions. Originally, he was for Medicare for all. Now, of course, he's for Medicare for all who want it, or basically a public option. And so he's been getting more right-wing in his positions. So that means that basically Pete Buttigieg basically stands for himself. Beto stood on tables, whereas Buttigieg stands for himself, and that's it. Whatever helps Mayor Pete get elected, that's what I get from him now. Okay, so now this is the thing that, of course, the younger generation, and that's who in this focus group, as you could see, can't actually stand. We cannot stand prepackaged, pre-made politicians or people that don't have principles. Things have changed massively since Frank Luntz started doing what he does. And, give him credit for asking good questions, even with the terrible framing. But look, younger people especially, have more information. We can look up politicians' positions, what they've talked about. And we can see if somebody said one thing in front of a crowd, a certain crowd, and another somewhere else, perhaps in a wine cave somewhere. We can smell the bullshit. So don't try to mess with us, right? Now, one more takeaway, of course, here is, as I mentioned before, 6 came in pro-Bernie, 10 left pro-Bernie. And look, the people who are even for other people, for example, there was somebody that was, hey, look, I like Bernie Sanders, but I'm going to go for Biden. They're trapped in that electability argument. Even so, you get a lot of people that haven't been exposed to Bernie Sanders before, or they get to hear him for the first time instead of hearing what he says through political pundits. Maybe, for example, there are political pundits that'll just give their opinion of Bernie Sanders, or they'll do an op-ed, or they'll take a quote out of context. When people actually hear Bernie Sanders, they think, oh, well, he's not what the pundits have been saying. He's not this cranky, angry old person. This guy makes a lot of sense. Well, we like him. And that's the scariest part about Bernie to the establishment. I remember when Bernie went on Joe Rogan's podcast. And there's a portion of his viewers, I would say a large portion of his viewers, though I'm not entirely certain about that. But look, a lot of people listen to Joe Rogan, and there's a good chance that a lot of them are libertarian and conservative. And so they thought when Bernie Sanders is going to come on, oh, great, we're going to listen to this, crazy old socialist, right? Turns out a lot of people in the comments, you go and look at the comment section of that stream saying, wait a minute, this guy's not crazy at all. I actually agree with a lot of what he says, and he makes a lot of sense. Well, that's what they're scared about. That's why the Bernie blackout exists. That's why corporate media refuses to cover him as much as possible. And if they do cover him, by the way, they will do so in negative hit pieces, in smear articles. And so that's the other thing, they know and they're afraid because his message resonates with the people. His fire, his anger, which, yes, is genuine, is something that a lot of people have been wanting to hear because they feel the same. And Jonathan Capehart, I think, said something earlier on Twitter. He said, "Oh, why do you keep yelling?" Right? And this is a refrain that you hear a lot from establishment pundits. Oh, why are you so why do you keep yelling? Why do you got to yell about everything? Why don't you just turn it down? Right? The thing is that Bernie Sanders, these pundits that are doing very well in the establishment bubble, they don't understand what he's yelling about because they don't live it. Again, they got a lot of money. They got their cushy jobs, in their field, and they don't understand what he's yelling about because they don't live that life. Okay, but these normal people, regular working people, they hear that and they say, "Yes, finally, somebody is yelling on behalf of us." Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm gonna have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a patreon.com/TYTNation set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.